Hey guys, welcome back. A flood of brand new polling data was released today. Going to be looking at 8 state-specific polling results in this video. If you'd like to take a look at any of the data for yourself, I'll have links posted down in the video description. Going to start with the upcoming contest, the Nevada caucus and the South Carolina primary. And then there's also a ton of Super Tuesday states to look at in this data as well. So starting off here with this Nevada caucus poll that was released today from Emerson Polling. This is a sample size of 425 respondents. Kind of interesting. We can see how things have changed over the course of this past year. So the candidates have a number of different bars in their graph. The first one is a data point from last year in March, and then the one in the middle is from this past November, and then the darker shaded in bar there at the end is the most recent data that was released today. And we can see that Sanders, he went from 23 to 19, now up to 30% in first place, and he's looking pretty strong heading in to these Nevada caucuses. Might be a pretty solid result there for the Vermont senator. Joe Biden falling off quite a bit, where he went from 26 to 30, then he loses 14 percentage points over the past handful of months, where he's now down there at 16%, whereas Buttigieg takes a big step forward. He was at 5% in the first two results, and then he gains 12 points up to 17 in this instance, actually in second place out of all these options. Elizabeth Warren went from 10, then she bolted up to 22, but then takes a big step back in this instance down to 12, a difference of 10 points there from where she was in November. Klobuchar also taking a rather large step forward, where she went from 2, then just to 1% back in November, now up to 11%. Tom Steyer put a ton of resources into trying to have success in Nevada. He was at 3 points. Now he's at 10% in this instance. And then Gabbard, relatively similar there at the bottom, 2, 1, and then 2%. And it's looking like it's going to be an extremely competitive race in that 2nd through 6th place range between Buttigieg, Biden, Warren, Klobuchar, and Steyer. It's anyone's guess as to how things might filter in and finish in that area and who might end up getting something in the way of pledged delegates, but it seems like a pretty safe bet at this point that Sanders is almost guaranteed to get something in the way of pledged delegates, and probably the majority. We'll see how Nevada plays out on Saturday. Hopefully we get the results at least a little bit faster than what we had in the Iowa caucus, but we'll have to see what takes place in their particular caucus. So now moving over to the next state of South Carolina. This one coming from Winthrop University, a sample size of 443 respondents, and also going to be going through the percent change since the last result that came out from this resource, which was back on September 30th. So we have Joe Biden leading the pack here at 24%, but he recedes back 13 points from where he was back in late September. So not a great look there for Biden, where he was at 37%, now down to 24%. And the numbers here in the next column are African-American support behind these individuals. So Biden doing a bit better with the African-American support than the state as a whole, where Pete Buttigieg here is at 7%. He gains 3 points from where he was in the prior result, just getting 1% from African-American voters. Tulsi Gabbard there at 1%. Amy Klobuchar at 4 points. She picks up 3 points from the prior result, and she's getting nothing in the way of African-American support. Then we can see Bernie Sanders here at 19%. He gains 11 points from that prior result, where he was only registering 8%. So a pretty positive sign there for the Vermont senator. He's at 17% among African Americans. Tom Steyer at 15 points. He gains 13 points from that prior result, and he's at 18 points with the African American vote. Elizabeth Warren, not a great look for her, where she's at 6%, losing 11 points from that prior result, where she was at 17, and then she has 5 points among the African American voters. And then, of course, Andrew Yang, not going to be participating anymore as he has officially dropped out, but he was able to register 1% in this instance. So now we have a lot of Super Tuesday states to run through. And first, I'm going to touch on a couple of California polls. This one coming from Monmouth, a sample size of 408 respondents. And we can see that Bernie Sanders leads the way at 24% in what is a very key state to have success in, given how many pledged delegates are going to be up for grabs in California. It's 415, far and away the most out of any contest that we'll have throughout this process. So then we have Biden actually in this instance in second place at 17. He's been consistently underperforming where he's been at in the polls. We'll see if he's able to change this trend heading into Nevada or South Carolina. But I'm kind of skeptical right now with Biden, just given how significantly and consistently he was underperforming the polls in both Iowa and New Hampshire. Then we have Bloomberg at 13, Warren at 10, Buttigieg at 9, Tom Steyer at 5, Klobuchar at 4, Tulsi Gabbard at 2. So only 2 of the candidates actually getting above that 15 percentage point threshold, those being, of course, Bernie Sanders as well as Joe Biden. And then the next California poll, this one is coming from USC, and it's giving us a sample size here of 803 respondents, and Bernie Sanders leading the way at 29.2%, followed by Joe Biden again in second place in this California poll at 21.4%, and also a relatively strong result for Elizabeth Warren at 20.2 percentage points. All of the rest of the candidates find themselves in single digits, where you have Bloomberg at 7.7, Pete Buttigieg is there at 5.8, then you have Amy Klobuchar at 2.7, and then Steyer and Gabbard round out the rest of the field, where you have Steyer at 2.1 and Tulsi Gabbard at 1.5. The next poll is from UMass Lowell, and actually the next 3 polls are all going to be from this resource. A respondent number of 600, that is the sample size. This is out of the state of Texas, another very large population state that has a ton of pledged delegates up for grabs, 228 to be exact. And we can see that Bernie Sanders leads the pack. It's very competitive at the top, but Sanders at 23%. In second place, it's Joe Biden at 20, Michael Bloomberg in third at 18, and then you have Elizabeth Warren at 14% in fourth place. All the rest of the candidates in single digits, with Amy Klobuchar at 9, Pete Buttigieg finds himself at 7%, Tulsi Gabbard at 4, and Tom Steyer at 2 percentage points. The next UMass Lowell poll comes out of the state of Minnesota, 450 respondents, and maybe not a huge surprise that the Minnesota senator is in first place, bringing in 27% of support, and Minnesota has 75 pledged delegates up for grabs on Super Tuesday. We can see in second place, it is Bernie Sanders at 21%. Bernie did extremely well in Minnesota in 2016, but it is also worth noting that Minnesota was a caucus in 2016 where Sanders did really well in a lot of those against Hillary Clinton, where this time around they're actually going to be switching over to a primary, so things could change a little bit in that instance. Then you have Elizabeth Warren at 16% in third place. Pete Buttigieg is next at 10%. Bloomberg and Joe Biden each bringing in 9 percentage points respectively, and Tulsi Gabbard is sitting there at 4 points. The next Super Tuesday state poll that we're getting here from UMass Lowell comes from North Carolina, a sample size of 415. And North Carolina has 110 pledged delegates that will be divvied up for Super Tuesday with their primary, and Sanders leading this one at 23%, competitive at the top, along with Michael Bloomberg, who's in second at 19. Joe Biden is next in line at 16. Elizabeth Warren is there at 13 points. Pete Buttigieg at 10. Amy Klobuchar at 7. And then we have Tom Steyer and Tulsi Gabbard each at 3 percentage points, respectively. And then the final state-specific poll, this one comes from Illinois, not on Super Tuesday. It's going to be a couple weeks after that, in the middle portion of the month of March. This Illinois poll coming from Southern Illinois University, a sample size, a number of respondents here of 821, and we can see that Bernie Sanders leading the pack at 22%. In second place, it's Michael Bloomberg at 17, Biden there in third at 14, Buttigieg at 13%. This is a state that Buttigieg is hoping to do well in, given the close proximity to South Bend, where he is the mayor from. And then we can see Klobuchar at 8%, Warren at just 6%. Not a great poll for her in this result. And then the other candidates are a bit lower than that. So those are the 8 state-specific polls that I wanted to run through in today's video. A lot of interesting data. In general, some very positive signs continuing to show there for the Vermont senator. He was almost in first place in every single poll, oftentimes being the closest competitors, along with in that upper tier being Joe Biden and Michael Bloomberg. If you guys want to continue to get these poll update numbers, then please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, and I hope to see you back here for my next video.